Cuba as a country has been endlessly tossed around by the never-ceasing winds of history. Since its discovery by the outside world, it has always been beholden or shaped by another nation. Its turbulent past reaches out across the gulf of time to strangle its present. Echoes of a long-lost dream can still be found in the great empty structures and liminal spaces of merciless concrete that still bludgeon Havana with the remembrance of their great lost promise. The national dish of Cuba is the ropa vieja, translating to old clothes in Spanish, a shredded beef stew formed by slow cooking flank steak till it falls apart, simmering those parts in a rich sauce of onions, bell peppers, garlic, tomatoes, and spices so that the strands of beef soak up a sofrito flavor. Typically served with rice and black beans, this culinary exemplification of Cuban culture and heritage may be slightly outside of my personal palate of beige, though I have been informed by more open-minded sources that it is quite delicious. And here, with this obnoxious outburst, I hope I have startled you out of the melancholic state the previous part may have put you in. So with that, let's go back to serious Michael for a second. Okay, well, as tragic as it may be, this is the part where I have to remember that this is in fact a school project, and while I love these grandiose statements and comedic bits, I do need to stick to the assignment, and so we'll now lift off about roughly 15 both fun and essential facts about Cuba. Now, while its origins remain unclear, the actual name Cuba is believed to possibly translate to where fertile land is abundant or great place, and is definitely pre-Hispanic. Cuba has a population of roughly 11.03 million people and is situated in the northern Caribbean, just a little south of Florida. Cuba's wildlife is home to a great many endemic species that literally cannot be found anywhere else. Notably, it houses the Crocodylus romphir, a Cuban crocodile, Millesuga helene, bee hummingbird, and the world-famous Tocororo, Cuban trogon. In addition to its scintillating wildlife, Cuba is also home to quite a few forms of flora. These include, but are not limited to, Roystonea regia, also known as the royal palm and Cuba's national tree, Ceiba pentandra, Ceiba tree, and Nicotiante tabacum, tobacco plant. The national flag of this temporally challenged nation, that's a reference just to the cars, because the cars are from like the 1950s and I think they look amazing, they are pieces of art, was created in 1849 but was officially adopted in 1902. It carries a great deal of symbolism, with the blue signifying Cuba's old colonial provinces, the white exemplifying the purity of the patriots' cause, please don't take that out of context, the red triangle representing strength and sacrifice for the cause of freedom, and the lone white star exemplifying independence. Cuba uses the Cuban peso, which has, as of early this year, the exchange rate of about $1 to 120 Cuban peso. Now, this beautiful nation is also home to some major travel sites, including but not limited to Old Havana, the ancient center of Havana and a UNESCO World Heritage Site, Varadero Beach, a resort town situated on Cuba's north coast, named as one of the best beaches in the Caribbean, and Vinales Valley, a UNESCO World Heritage Cultural cultural landscape, my brain is not braining at 2 a.m., where farmers use the same techniques their fathers had for centuries. Notably, one of Cuba's largest holidays is Carnival of Santiago de Cuba, Starting in the 17th century, this colorful late summer carnival exemplifies Cuba's culture and joy. Though after hearing the impressive drumming music, I don't think there are enough noise-canceling headphones in the world that could get me to go, sadly. Now, while Cuba isn't exactly world famous for being a wealthy country, it is somewhat known for a few key export products. These are mainly nickel. Cuba actually has one of the world's largest nickel reserves, fun fact, pharmaceuticals such as vaccines and other medical products, and of course, tobacco, just to even out the pharmaceuticals. And as my dear Uncle Gus would attest, Cuba's hand-rolled cigars are truly globally renowned. Now, I've already made allusions to Cuba's, quite frankly, dark political history. However, for this video, I will try to keep it somewhat contained. Now, according to ChatGPT, give me a second here. Cuba is a socialist republic governed as a one-party communist state under the Communist Party. The current president, head of state, is Miguel Diaz-Canel, in office since 2018, and he also leads the Communist Party. Cuba's government is unitary, with a single legislature, and political opposition is not permitted in the one-party system. End quote. That was a very lame way to throw a paper. Now, that is what ChatGPT had to say on the matter. So translated to slightly more frank terms, this essentially means that Cuba is a totalitarian state where disagreeing with the all-consuming Communist Party is not permitted. Another beautiful jewel of a nation which could easily be a beacon of economic prosperity and political freedom in its region is once again claimed by the forever elusive lure of a communist state. For those of us with better fashion sense than myself, quite a low bar indeed, Cuban culture offers some fascinating traditional garb for both men and women. For us suave gentlemen, we have the guyabera, a breezy, straight-cut shirt which perfectly blends fashion and practicality in Cuba's quintessentially tropic climate. For the fellerettes out there are the Rumba-style dresses, famous for their vibrant colors and deep historical heritage. Cuba is, relatively speaking, quite a religiously diverse country with a predominantly Christian population, roughly 59% with the majority Roman Catholic, and several Afro-Cuban syncretic religions, another 17% such as Santeria. The roughly remaining 23% is made up of either non-religious folks or simply much smaller communities of Muslims, Protestants, Jews, and the like. For those sonically minded of you, you might already be familiar with son cubano, Cuba's very own music genre. Around the early 20th century, rural Cuban musicians took it upon themselves to fuse African rhythms with Spanish guitar melodies. I'm not exactly melodically gifted myself, yet even I can recognize good music when it hits me in the face. And this is certainly good music. It perfectly blends smooth tunes and chipper solos in a beautiful combination that doesn't merely pacify like a lot of modern music. It concentrates both emotions and thoughts. Now, I'm even less of a sportsman than a musician, so I genuinely have no idea about what I'm talking about here, but Cuba's sports culture mainly revolves around boxing, baseball, and athletics. While baseball is considered the national sport and has its own professional league, Cuba is globally recognized for its boxers and has received literally dozens of Olympic gold medals. Boxing is actually popularly viewed as a means of socioeconomic mobility and a path to lift yourself and family out of poverty, which I think is a pretty beautiful thing. In terms of people eligible to go on the Joe Rogan podcast, Cuba offers 3 prime candidates: Jose Marti, Celia Cruz, and Javier Sotomayor. Jose Marti was a revered essayist, poet, and independence hero. He was crucial in Cuba's struggle for independence from Spain and actually died in battle. Living from 1853 to 1859, he was the quintessential poet-soldier. Celia Cruz was known worldwide as the Queen of Salsa and recorded a total of 37 albums over the course of her career. Living from 1925 to 2003, she brought a little slice of Cuban culture to the wider world. Finally, Javier Sotomayor is arguably Cuba's premier former athlete. He set the world record for men's high jump, roughly 8 feet, in 1993, and it has still never been surpassed. Born 1967 and still kicking, he is one of Cuba's most celebrated sports heroes. Lastly, to complete the trifecta of my incompetence, we arrive at Cuban slang. Now, it is important to understand that I don't know any colloquial slang. I tried looking at my sister's TikTok page, and I have no idea what any of this means. So at least Cuban slang, it doesn't make me feel like I require a lobotomy and full linguistic retraining. A perfect example would be hacer, meaning buddy or friend. Basically an informal term for camaraderie. For example, hacer que bola roughly translates to, hey buddy, what's up? Despite my lack of general knowledge, slang can be extremely important for shaping a culture, and Cuban slang draws from both its rich Spanish and African roots to form something uniquely its own. Now, those were all of my points and fun and essential facts about Cuba for now. So I shall pass it back on to the Michael over there, and now that I realize you have no idea of the spatial awareness of this room, that won't make any sense, but you shall see. Okay, thank you very much. Goodbye. Whew. That was a long take. Okay, I have thoroughly researched Cuba and have learned a tremendous amount about it for this project. I've come to be fascinated by it and have found that it has just as deep a cultural history as almost any other nation I've studied. It's so easy to reduce a country we know almost nothing about to a single historical event. And while it may have been quite a big historical event, there is still clearly so much more to this place and its people than, just one nuclear crisis. I really like Son Cubano, and it's already given me a couple different ideas for sequences in a short film I'm workshopping. I'm American, though I live in a small island called Cyprus, and I personally see parallels between here and Cuba. Especially in the emphasis and whole culture around Carnival. As always, thank you so much for your time, which you will never reclaim. And with that existential note, I can finally say adios.